Welcome to What's Brewing with IAT Insurance Group, where episode after episode we cover the latest marketplace trends with subject matter experts who are fueling our mission to provide insurance answers together. Grab your cup and let's settle in.
Well, good morning. I'm Nicole Kirby, and welcome to What's Brewing. I'm the AVP of Marketing and Analytics for our Commercial Transportation Unit here at IAT, and I'm joined once again by my friends and colleagues, Pete Matthews, our SVP of Commercial Truck, and Jared Fritz, Loss Control Specialist. And last year, which I can't even say it was last year, it was last summer, I think, the three of us came together to talk about strategic cargo theft, a trend that continues to surge where criminals employ various tactics to misdirect and steal freight, unfortunately. As we look back on 2024, the trend reached an all-time high with reported losses totaling about $455 million, and the value per theft rose 7.7% to around $202,000 according to Verisk. So, Jared, you recently talked about strategic cargo theft with transportation topics. What's changed since the last time we spoke, or has anything changed?
I was really hoping that since our last call on this topic in 2024, that the cargo theft landscape would have showed some signs of improvement, but it really hasn't. Cargo thefts in calendar year 2024 finished the year up 26% over 2023. To make matters even worse, several estimates from organizations that track cargo theft expect a 22 to 25% increase in cargo theft in 2025. What these numbers and estimates mean is that you can't let your guard down for a second if you are in any part of this supply chain. Obviously what we talk about on this podcast is, we insure trucking companies, but it truly is just an epidemic everywhere in the supply chain, whether it's, ocean containers, rail. This isn't just strictly just to trucking, but it is just so prevalent, and it's honestly not really showing signs of getting any better.
Pete, what kinds of goods are these thieves targeting? Why do you think this kind of theft continues to surge?
It's interesting. I think it used to be, back years ago, we would think about it being, target theft commodities being things like electronics or maybe alcohol. And as underwriters, we looked for shippers who were hauling that. But, as things have changed economically in the landscape with tariffs and commodity prices, that's expanded. And I think they're targeting anything that has value, from precious metals to construction equipment or construction materials to household goods. It's really wherever they can make a dollar, right? So and these guys, as they become more sophisticated, they're almost like business people. This is the business that they're in, is targeting cargo shipments as a way to make money. So they've gotten smarter, unfortunately. And this, as Jared said, the surge is real. If you think about this a few years ago, cargo theft was something that we talked about in the industry, the insurance industry, the trucking industry. You didn't see a lot of mainstream articles, but some of those numbers that Jared referenced came out of a CNBC 6-month investigation that hit the mainstream media. And they're estimating cargo theft at $1 billion a year or more. And as it grows, it impacts the supply chain. I remember, everybody remembers the great toilet paper shortage of 2020 and COVID. That shows you just how fragile our supply chain is. And as this theft increases, it impacts everybody, right? It's going to impact all of us. So as they steal commodities, they impact a supply chain. And now that has all kinds of downstream impacts on availability of goods and services, as well as the cost.
Jared, so Verisk reports that 46% of all cargo theft in 2024 occurred in California, Texas, and Illinois, targeting warehouse, distribution centers, and truck stops. Do you think there's a reason these states are being targeted the most?
There's that famous quote, from that bank robber, Willie Sutton, when he was asked about why he robs banks. He replied, because that's where the money's at. I think that applies here as well. These three states are major shipping hubs, both internationally and domestically, and all have large populations that require thousands of shipments and loads daily, traveling through those states, originating in those states, or delivering in those states. You combine that with the organized crime rings, Pete mentioned earlier, these organized crime rings that specialize in cargo theft that are prevalent in these states. And that's why they account for such a large percentage of cargo theft. I'll add, from being in this industry for quite a while, these states rarely change. Occasionally you may see Florida added to that list. Georgia will be in there. But, really, these three states have been the top ones for quite a while. And there's really not a lot of change, even if you take it out to maybe the top 5, 10 states. Seems like they've pretty much all been consistent over the years. Something I would add is, while those are the hot spots for theft, you just have to remain vigilant everywhere. There's organizations that put out the theft maps every year, every quarter, and it's not just urban areas. It's not just these hotspot states. Literally every state on the map, has cargo theft, urban areas, rural areas. The minute you get complacent as a shipper, as a carrier, as a driver, you're going to have a cargo theft on your hands.
During our conversation over the summer, we talked about the tactics cyber criminals are starting to employ: consigning impersonation, double brokering, especially I'm sure with AI, it's become way more sophisticated. And Jared, can you quickly remind listeners what that means exactly?
This type of theft has increased 430% over the past 2 years. And, just to cut, in this strategic cargo theft, it's pretty broad and it can include several different types of thefts. But say just a couple examples, that you said earlier. In a brokering fraud type of theft, one common tactic involves perpetrators impersonating a freight broker or a carrier to secure a shipment from a customer. But you have to remember that this is only one half of what that theft needs for it to be successful. They also need a tractor and a trailer to pick up this shipment. They then arrange for an unsuspecting driver or carrier to transport and deliver this freight. The thieves often use industry-specific terminology, instruct drivers not to disclose delivery details to the shipper, and may even tender cash upon delivery to add a layer of legitimacy to this theft. When the shipment fails to arrive at its original destination, at its true destination, the customer investigates only to discover that they may have contracted with a fraudulent broker or a fraudulent carrier. The innocent driver, on the other hand, who unknowingly followed false instructions, is often left bearing the blame for this theft. In a consignee or a customer impersonation theft, scammers use phishing and cyber attacks to alter recipient details and to intercept shipments in transit. The most common tactic would be to change the delivery location once that shipment is in transit. Something I would add to both of these examples of strategic cargo theft is how small and medium-sized fleets are the targets to be used in these types of thefts.
Pete, how does the surge in theft impact our underwriting strategy and the cost of insurance for motor carriers?
Nicole, I don't think it fundamentally changes our underwriting strategy. We'll continue to underwrite risks and exposures as we have, but it does put more focus on the cargo piece. Cargo historically really was the smaller line of business. When you're writing a package for a motor carrier, the auto liability was where we spent most of our time understanding those risks and exposures. And of course, the auto liability does have some impact on the cargo piece. But now with the cargo theft becoming a much larger issue and a much bigger exposure for us, we're going to spend a little bit more time understanding the specific exposures related to cargo. And we'll also want to understand the controls that carrier has in place. So we'll put more emphasis around some of the things they can do that I'm sure Jared will talk about in a few minutes to try to guard against the cargo theft. So I think, unfortunately for carriers, with the increase in theft, it's putting a lot of pressure on that line where it was a much more profitable line in the package. That's become less so, to the point where we're going to have to, as carriers, increase pricing in order to keep up with the loss cost. So it puts pressure on loss cost for every carrier, which then, of course, pushes up the pricing for the motor carriers, ultimately impacting shipping costs.
Jared, is there anything that motor carriers and drivers can do to remain vigilant against these type of attacks?
Nicole, there is. And from the strategic, I guess I would break it down into two parts. From that strategic cargo theft that we talked about a few minutes ago, just a few kind of best practices on that side it sounds simple, but it's just always important to keep a healthy level of skepticism about who you're talking to on the phone, who you're doing business with. thoroughly screen those new partnerships with customers, especially brokers that a carrier may be using. Safeguard and verify information you may be given about a shipment. And of course, just in any business, just like we do here, is ensure IT best practices and protocols are in place, such as keeping passwords confidential and avoid clicking on any unknown links. From the traditional theft side, such as stealing a tractor and trailer loaded with cargo when it's parked at a truck stop or parked at a terminal location, some best practices include including cargo security in your new driver orientation program and including that as part of your pre-trip inspection, daily. Just always be checking that, always be training drivers. Be strategic with parking. Back trailers against buildings, fences, and other trailers. Park in well-lit, high-traffic areas, and look for surveillance cameras at the locations that you park at. Do not discuss your load or route with anyone who does not need to know. If you suspect you're being followed, slow down and let the vehicle pass. If that fails, exit at a safe location. Contact law enforcement if needed. Try to drive several hours after pickup before making any stops, reducing the chance of being targeted. This is something I tell carriers, this is something I tell drivers as well, is, especially on that high theft risk cargo that they may be hauling, if they're picking up, picking up a load of TVs, picking up a load of Nike shoes, is make sure you have fuel in the truck. It doesn't do you any good to pick that load up and be stopping 30 minutes down the road to have to fuel up with fuel when somebody could be following you. Use theft deterrent devices to secure and track your freight. If the vehicle must be left unattended, tractor trailer must be left unattended, lock it, take the keys, and return as quickly as possible. Upon return, scan the area for suspicious people or vehicles. Those are just a few of the best practices, both on the strategic cargo theft side and the traditional cargo theft side.
So I know as one of IAT's value add services, we have our loss control website. Will some of those resources that we're talking about today be available there? And then kind of along those lines, we do have great partnerships with people too. Is there anything or partnerships that IAT has to help ensure safeguard freight from falling victim to strategic cargo theft? And then can you highlight some of those?
I can. And as you said, on the IAT loss control website that is available to IAT policyholders, we have a section of preferred vendors that we partner with that offer preferred pricing to our clients, such as dash cameras and telematics systems and MVR monitoring providers. Two recent additions to that list were both companies that specialize in cargo theft prevention, Enforcer Locks and 7P Solutions. Enforcer Locks offer a range of heavy-duty cargo security products, including padlocks, trailer door bar locks, air cuff locks, and trailer kingpin locks. There's a saying in cargo theft prevention that a load at rest is a load at risk. When used, these security products can help protect both equipment and cargo. One thing cargo theft criminals do not have on their side is time. When trying to steal a load, they will often look for another target when theft prevention devices such as trailer bar locks, kingpin locks, and air cuff locks are being used. 7P Solutions specializes in covert GPS cargo tracking and trailer geofencing technology. 7P makes both single-use and multi-use GPS tracking devices that can be embedded in high theft risk cargo for the tracking of that product. Other products that 7P Solutions offer are devices that provide notifications if trailer doors are breached or opened while in transit, temperature tracking of cargo, and geofencing and air brake technology that can stop and deactivate trailers if needed. If anyone listening to this podcast is interested in learning more about these products or these companies, please reach out to the IAT Loss Control Department. We'd be happy to provide additional information on these products and contact information to reach out to.
Is there anything that you want to add, Pete?
Be vigilant. As Jared said, use best practices, leverage the resources that your carrier, including IAT, provide to help you avoid this kind of theft. The more security you have in place, the better it'll be from an insurance acquisition standpoint.
As Jared mentioned, if you would like more information, feel free to reach out to our loss control department. The loss control contact information will be available in the show description. Thank you for spending time with us today, and thank you for listening to What's Brewing, and we'll see you next time.
Providing insurance answers together is what we do best. Thanks for tuning in to the latest episode of What's Brewing. Until next time.